Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest video in the Netbeans 101 series. This is going to be a series of videos on the options dialog. There are a lot of options, there are a lot of configuration that you can do, and so consequently, rather than make this a 2 or 3 hour video, I'm going to split it into sections. And then you can just look at the parts that are of more use to you and what you're going to use on your system and that type of thing. Today we're going to look at the general tab of the options dialog. So click on Tools and click on Options, and here we have the general tab. Now this is in Linux, and I'm actually using a virtual machine. If I show you the Windows one, you can see that there is a slight difference apart from the web browsers. On the Windows one, which is not in a virtual machine, I'm not using a proxy. In the virtual machine, I'm using a proxy. So first of all, what is a proxy? Well, a proxy is basically a server or server software that takes requests from a number of different applications for different information and then makes sure it goes to the right place. It's usually used in large business, or if you want to hide your IP address, that's another way you can do that. Now, normally with Netbeans, you don't have to do anything in the general screen for the proxy because it is very good in actually spotting the proxy for you. If by any chance you do have problems with a proxy, then this will usually be on a business, on a large corporate network, and you'll need to ask your IT department for the correct settings for that. So as you can see, I use basic same layout. It's the Nimbus look and feel for both of them. The windows do look slightly different because this is using the Windows is using the Aero system, and of course Linux is not using Aero as it doesn't have it. The general tab in options, this is where you can set the default web browser that your system will use when you're creating for the web and you run the program. You can either select from the drop-down list the default system browser. I'm using Chromium on this one. If you need to add a default set of switches, then you can actually click on the Edit tab, and this will bring up the web browser manager with the browser that you've got selected, and as you can see, you can actually give it some arguments or switches if necessary. If it hasn't found all your browsers and it finds them all by default, usually you can add a browser to the system. You'll notice that Chrome and Chromium basically use the same system. Mozilla has a slightly different system on that, and Firefox is using a different one. The default browser, as you can see, there's nothing listed in here. I usually use Opera, and that's the one that is usually my default, but on this one I'm actually using the Chromium browser, and it has the Netbeans plugin. So arguments, if you need to put a default argument in, then you can on that. You can test your connection, just click on it and you'll get the tick. And the last part is usage statistics. This is Netbeans IDE 10 VC5, which is the voting candidate 5. It's not for general release yet. Provided nobody finds too many errors with it, then it will come into general release. But because of that, I'm actually sending data back to Apache so that they can find out a bit more about how I use it and what I do on the system. It is anonymous, so they don't know where it's actually come from, which is quite good. And if you want to find out more about it, you can click on Learn More, and as you can see, it's starting up my Chromium browser for me. While that's actually starting, there we go, it's here. So it's actually the Netbeans one, and it tells you what data is collected, for example, the IDE, what type of system that you're on, that type of thing. It doesn't have any usernames or passwords, it doesn't contain paths, file names or class names, and it doesn't use fragments of the source code. So basically, it's finding out what parts of the system you actually use. And finally, you've got the export and import. Now, we looked at that a little bit earlier on in the UI section. This is available on all of the options. So if I go to miscellaneous, you'll see it's at the bottom. So these buttons are on all of the options, and it allows you to export, and in this case to import the options that you wish to do. We'll cancel that just for now. If I actually go on to the export, you can see all of the available options. None are actually ticked at the moment, but if you tick all, then it'll export all. One of the things to bear in mind when you do the exporting and importing is that it will actually export and import paths. Now, this is Linux, so the paths, as you can see, are different to those that we have in Windows. So just bear that in mind when you do import and export items that have paths in it, so that you don't actually have problems with setting up the paths. As you can see, when you actually set all, it collects lots of different information, some of which it doesn't, and you can decide whether or not to do it. By default, it doesn't import or export your passwords, but you may want to do this if you're just using it on your own system and it is secure. Bear in mind that passwords and so on will be in a zip file, so that if they fall into the wrong hands, they'll be easy to for people to secure systems. One of the things I thought, yes, the CSS preprocessors, these all have default paths, and so of course these will be different in Linux or in Mac and Windows. So this might be something that you don't want to export if you're going to do it across multiple operating systems. Of course, if you're only going to remain on one operating system, then it's a very good thing to export that. Okay, so once you've actually made any changes, the apply button will be shown. For example, here, I'm actually not going to make the change. So you click apply, and quite often you will be asked to restart the Apache Netbeans for the changes to take place. This doesn't always happen, it depends on what changes you're making, but sometimes it does require for the IDE to be restarted. Okay, that's a very quick video on the general tab for the options. As you can see, that other tabs have a lot of different settings, and you can actually do quite a lot in them. So these are things that we will come to, and I'll probably do a video on each one. So there could well be 10 or 15 different videos under the options section. I hope you found that useful. Please like, comment, and subscribe. My name's John, and I'll see you next time.